I'm a 24-year-old woman writing about a recent incident that happened to me. I come from a fairly wealthy background, with my father being a movie producer. We live in a small country by the ocean, so there's a good chance my dad isn't that well known. Internationally, my greedy stepmom freaked out when dad left me everything, so she broke in to steal it. But what he secretly planned for her left even me speechless. Dad, let's call him Fu. He married my mother when she became pregnant with me, but she died shortly after due to some unanticipated pregnancy complications. My dad had been a single parent for nearly 10 years since then, and while he undoubtedly received many offers from very attractive women, he always put me before his personal relationships. He accumulated a lot of wealth in his early years, so we moved to a city that was more focused on movies. When I was 12, I struggled to fit in at my new school because of bullying. 2 boys in my grade used to tease me every day about my clothes, and when they unintentionally pushed me down 2 stairs, my dad was called to the school but didn't meet the requirements. Bullies or their parents because of his busy schedule. My dad had always supported me, but he couldn't be there much because of his busy job, so he sent me back with my grandparents, at least until I could get used to a new environment. My grandparents have been nothing short of angels, raising me as if I were their own child. My dad did return for family gatherings and holidays, but that's all I saw of him for the next 6 years, so it's safe to say that I became estranged from him. I began to suspect something was wrong when I overheard my grandparents discussing something pertaining to my father. I was 15 at the time, so I went straight to them and inquired about the matter, hoping it had to do with my dad finally bringing me back with him. My grandparents then revealed to me that my dad had married this woman he met during I wasn't happy about this, because my dad started a new family after leaving me, but since I had no say in the matter, I pouted and waited for them to arrive. Lisa had a very strange vibe from the moment she entered my grandparents' house, and I could sense all of her pretentious behavior of being very kind. This was during the filming of his show, toward me, but I was relieved that I was no longer living with my father for his sake. As we spoke, it became clear that she was divorced and had 2 children that I might get to meet if I ever went to my father's house. My father did ask me if I wanted to move out with him since I was old enough, but I flatly refused, feeling betrayed and abandoned by him. They later left. Speaking with my grandparents, I came to the realization that we all shared the same suspicion about her acting nice, but whatever. I finished my schooling in my grandparents' town, worked really hard to get into film school, and was accepted into the best one along with a few others, but the issue was that it was in the city where my dad and his family lived. I was content with my life on my own, and was okay with my grandparents, but I worried that if I attended my favorite college, my dad would put restrictions on me. I've always been interested in technical jobs on sets, primarily camera work, and when my dad learned that I had been accepted to the best college in his city, he was thrilled to see me again. I did let him know that if I stayed in the city, he and his family would always be watching me, which he acknowledged that I still had my doubts about my grandparents' repeated requests, so I chose to enroll in the course. My dad invited me to his house, which I initially turned down, but after he and Lisa persisted, I decided to pay them a visit. When I arrived at my dad's mansion, it didn't appear as though I had ever lived there. The walls were covered with photos of Lisa and her children, and some of my dad looked very thin and pale, so I was my father, worried about him, offered to cover my tuition, and asked me to stay as long as I wanted, but I refused because I didn't want any sympathy money from him. I applied for a student loan and moved into the college residence hall. Just as I was ready to leave in the afternoon, I ran into Lisa's kids, who had just returned from their acting coaching classes. It was the biggest shock of my life to discover that they were the same kids who had bullied me as a child. I called my grandparents and told them about it because I wanted to tell my dad about it. But, to be honest, I didn't really know him or his reaction. They told me that I had done the right thing by keeping this from my dad because it had been a few years into his and Lisa's marriage, and there was a good chance it might ruin our relationship. I complied and spoke to the bullies, James and Jake, both 24 males, for formality's sake. My grandparents had told me about Jake and James's antics, and I left as soon as I could. It seems that their biological father was a wealthy businessman who didn't want to leave his children, but Lisa somehow chose to accuse him of domestic abuse and took the children into her new marriage. My dad didn't want any more children, but he consented for Lisa. He had known Jake and James since they were 15. And Lisa should have tried to calm things down and explain the new dynamics to them, but she couldn't care less about it all, and it affected my dad's relationship overall. I was kept away from my dad because he neglected to remind him that they weren't his children. He used to give them everything he could afford, only for them to scold him in front of their relatives. He had been shady from the start, but after I moved to the city, my dad felt he had someone he could trust. He had occasionally hinted to me about his relationship with Lisa, saying that she spends a significant portion of his income on promoting her children, which he believes is untrue. Since I didn't want to get involved in their relationship, I chose to keep quiet and listen to him vent. One thing during my time in college, I used to spend weekends with my dad and his family. I stopped going after a while because I didn't feel welcome there, but I had to go again because it was soon discovered that my dad had cancer in its final stages and only had a few years left. Because of how aggressive he was, it was difficult to see my father in pain, but what hurt even more was how unhappy he was. I could see how hard my dad tried to connect with them, but they treated him like an ATM. What's worse is that Lisa never saw this as a problem, and by the time my father was near death, she had stopped visiting him in the hospital. Due to him, Jake had gotten a brief recurring role in a sitcom, but it was never like Lisa's kid treated him like a father figure. In addition to not showing up very often, my dad cried a lot to me in his last days, feeling abandoned by his wife and stepchildren. I even tried to talk to Lisa about taking care of my father, but she responded insensitively, saying that she would rather take care of her future than wait for someone to move on. It's safe to say that she was the worst of humans I had ever met. And my father died shortly after I completed my course. Lisa attended my father's wake for no more than 15 minutes when the influential people in the industry arrived, while her sons didn't even bother to reveal their identities to their stepdad. I made the decision that day that I would never consider these people family again, and I made the decision to move to another state to pursue a career in film. He left 20% of his wealth for his parents, who were already fairly well off, and 10% plus a city condo for Lisa and her children. A week after the wake, however, I was called by Dad's lawyer to his mansion as soon as possible. When I arrived, I saw Lisa and her children sitting there impatiently. Dad's lawyer explained that before he passed away, he had declared his will and wished to give me nearly 70% of his assets, including his mansion, had also left me a final message expressing his regret for not being the father he wanted me to be. I became overwhelmed and emotional over this, but the real shocker came when Lisa and her children left the mansion in a fury. I asked Dad's lawyer what the possible repercussions would be, and he reassured me that I didn't need to worry, because whatever those three planned to do would undoubtedly be against the law. I decided to throw out my plans to move to another state, because I had a house all to myself. Shortly after, I called Lisa and asked her to remove everything she and her children owned, because this was no longer their home. Lisa was clearly upset and asked why I was treating them so cruelly after learning about their struggles. I cheerfully replied that I'd rather look to the future than my past, and she hung up after getting a taste of my own medicine. I had a good weekend with my grandparents, who were not as surprised as I was, because they had long suspected Lisa's intentions, but were relieved that she was receiving retribution for treating her son like a broken object in his final days. I did receive a few nasty texts from her for a few days, but I liked her being unhappy after what she had done, and returned to the city to find the door of my mansion already open. I suspected a burglary and called the police and my father's attorney, who was the only person I knew well enough. When the police arrived, they discovered that Lisa and her kids had broken into the house while I was away. They were acting very foolishly and said that they did it because it was their home, and no one could kick them out. The police were upset at this immature behavior and were prepared to arrest them, but my dad's lawyer asked me not to put them in jail just yet because he had a better plan. I suspected his intentions, but I still decided to go ahead and make a fake will, because there was no way that Lisa's dear husband, James and Jake's father, could do them so dirty and leave them with nothing. Dad's lawyer listened to him, told the police not to press charges just yet, and then they left almost immediately. He invited Lisa and her children inside the house and asked us to wait for a few minutes while he ran to bring something to show us. I was afraid for my life as I was left alone with them, but Lisa knew better than to be arrested for assault, so we sat and waited. When Dad's lawyer arrived with a box in his hands, he revealed something that nobody had anticipated. Apparently, my dad had known for some time that Lisa was cheating on him when he began to get sick, and her behavior toward him changed significantly. He spoke with his lawyer and added a clause in the will to protect my interests going forward. Given that she had remained faithful to him for the remainder of his life, the share he was going to give Lisa and her kids could increase by 30%, deducted from my share. This could only occur if Lisa agreed to it, which she did right away, and my dad's lawyer gave her the document to sign agreeing to this arrangement. Lisa's face brightened when she heard it, but it was all about to fall apart in a matter of seconds. It was also stated in this agreement that Lisa would forfeit the first 10% she received if she was proven to have cheated. Despite this, she signed the consent form because there was no way to collect any evidence against her. Once everyone understood the agreement, my dad's lawyer took out a pen drive and a set of documents from that box, which he then gave to me, played the videos on his laptop, which revealed that my dad had surreptitiously placed a CCTV system in the living room to catch Lisa. Not only did the system catch Lisa with another man in the house, but it also captured some intimate moments. That proved she was cheating on my dad during their marriage. The documents he gave me included some photos of Lisa with the man she was cheating on my dad with. I know this sounds like the plot of a good television show, but I suppose Dad had learned a lot from his work because Lisa had now signed the papers that said she would receive nothing. Her face went white when she realized what she had done, and she started to lose her temper, saying that this was unfair to her and her kids, and that she should have been informed about the proof. My dad's lawyer reminded her that even this exchange, where the explicit terms of the will were declared, had been captured on the CCTV camera directly behind her, and that she should now pack her belongings and leave the condo. James took care of his mother and left with her since they knew they were stuck. Before departing, my dad's attorney advised me to be ready for a court case and have the locks changed as soon as possible to prevent more break-ins. I took his advice and called my 2 days after the actual incident. My dad's lawyer expected Lisa and her children to go to their lawyer, who then decided to sue me for a larger share of the inheritance on the grounds that she was duped. My grandparents told them how dramatic everything had turned out, so they decided to come stay with me for the next few days to ensure my safety, signing the contract, and didn't think my dad wrote the will, but he did sign it under duress. To be honest, I'm not sure how she intends to prove these inflated allegations, but my dad's attorney has reassured me that the case is still in our favor, so there's really nothing to worry about. After playing me, Lisa chose to approach my parents to persuade them to support her, having a larger portion of the inheritance for her and her kids. But when they chose to reject her as well, she proceeded to deceive them into believing that they were given a smaller portion of their own son's property because, in fact, it was my plan. My grandma, for once, believed her, but my grandpa always supported me. And all of her hard work was erased when I asked both of my grandparents if they wanted the mansion for themselves. Lisa threatened me in a voicemail after that, and I filed for a restraining order based on that, which I was granted. At this point, only my immediate family is aware of the battle for the inheritance. And Reddit is aware of it because the case is about to go to court. However, my astute stepmother, Lisa, chose to go to the movie fraternity and make false accusations about her deceased husband, was pressuring her to give me everything after his death, and now we've planned the will to mislead her. Many people knew my father and how kind he was, so they called her bluff and asked her to get checked out. Some others asked her why she was crying over the money, since she had a good enough job too. In other words, her attempt to win sympathy backfired pretty nicely when Jake lost. My dad's lawyer has asked us to avoid the negative attention as much as possible, but it is becoming challenging with the job he got because of my dad, because the production company didn't want to associate with someone this controversial. One negative thing that happened during all of this was that local media tabloids picked up the news and were now bothering me and my grandparents for a comment on this. It's been a few more days, and regrettably, things have only gotten more complicated. I didn't anticipate this, but Lisa has somehow found new ways to escalate the situation after she lost credibility with the film industry and Jake lost his job. I had assumed that Lisa would back off, at least temporarily, but she obviously doubled down on her efforts. And this time, she's not only targeting me, as well as pursuing my friends and other family members, spreading false information, and attempting to cut me off from anyone who might be able to support me. The first instance occurred when Lisa's legal team sent a letter to my dad's lawyer, stating that I was emotionally incapable of managing the estate. She claimed that I was still in mourning and was not prepared to deal with the intricacies of the inheritance. In addition to claiming that I had a history of mental health problems and was incapable of making logical decisions, Lisa also included a few names of family friends she had reportedly spoken to who were worried about my well-being. It seems like a low blow to try to use my grief as a weapon against me, especially given how hard I've been working to manage everything. I'm not sure how she persuaded I spoke with my dad's lawyer about this latest development, and he reassured me that it was just another desperate attempt by Lisa to get her way. He reminded me that we had evidence of my ability to manage the estate and that her claims wouldn't hold up in court. Some of the people she used to support her claims were people I hadn't even spoken to in years. I also learned through mutual acquaintances that Lisa has been contacting some of my dad's former business partners in an effort to turn them against me. She is attempting to harm my reputation by making it appear as though I am incapable of carrying on my dad's work. Fortunately, the majority of them knew my father well enough to reject her claims. Her willingness to go this far demonstrated how determined she was to keep pushing. The last straw was yesterday, when someone vandalized my car by keying the side of it and leaving a nasty note that read, "Karma's coming for you," on the windshield. I can't prove it was Lisa, but it seems like something she would do given the circumstances, so I filed a police report. But they can't do much without proof. I've talked to my lawyer about it, and we're getting ready to bring up the restraining order in court once more, along with the harassment and defamation. At this point, I'm not just trying to defend myself legally, I'm also trying to protect my sanity and peace of mind every time I believe Lisa has hit me. It's shocking me that the whole situation is going beyond just legal battles and manipulation, and is becoming outright harassment. I had a lengthy conversation with my grandparents, who have supported me through all of this. And they are just as tired of Lisa as I am. My grandpa even suggested that I sell the mansion, move somewhere far away, and start over. I must admit that the thought of leaving everything behind and starting over is alluring. A new life without Lisa touching me sounds like a dream, but this was also my dad's house update 3. A lot has happened since my last update, but a turning point has finally arrived when Lisa was formally taken to court. Let's just say that things did not go as planned. After months of dragging this mess through the threat of legal battles, the court decided in my favor, shutting her down completely. Lisa and her lawyer were obviously struggling to make a case out of nothing when the judge delivered the verdict. You could see the shock on Lisa's face because she had spent all this time believing that she could manipulate the system the way she tried to manipulate everyone else, but it didn't work. She also made claims that she was tricked into signing the will and that my dad was coerced. Was even more chaotic following the court hearing. In the courthouse hallway, Lisa and her sons, Jake and James, got into a heated argument. I didn't hear everything, but it seemed to me that her sons were upset with her for losing the case. They had apparently thought they would get a better deal, and when it became apparent that Lisa's lies had led them down a dead end, they weren't happy. There was a lot of yelling, and at one point, Jake stormed out of the building, leaving Lisa and James behind. James followed soon after, and it seemed like they weren't exactly on speaking terms anymore. Later that evening, I received an unexpected phone call from Jake, who apologized for the way things had turned out and acknowledged that he and his brother had been unaware of what their mother was. I thanked him for the apology, but I made it clear that I wasn't interested in getting involved with them after everything that had happened. He even went so far as to say that Lisa had been manipulating them for years, making them think that my dad was the bad guy, when, in fact, she was the one who caused all the problems in the family. I've been through too much already, so I'm not interested in pursuing any kind of relationship with them. The last thing I need is to be drawn into any more drama with Lisa or her sons. They made their decisions and must now deal with the fallout. I told them that I wished them well, but that it would be best if we all moved on separately. Update 4. Hello Redditors. This will be the last update on the entire story as it stands right now. This update is for those who have inquired about my grandparents and how my life has been going. It has been a few months since the court case concluded, and things have finally calmed down following Lisa's actions regarding the inheritance. The court's decision was a relief because nobody felt sorry for her. Not me, not her own sons, and most definitely not the general public, after she attempted to deceive and manipulate them, way into receiving a larger portion of my father's estate. But in the end, she had nothing but shame to show for it. Following the court case, I issued a brief statement through my attorney because I didn't want to be drawn into any more drama. I stated that the will was valid and that the court had upheld my father's wishes. I also mentioned how needless and painful all of Lisa's actions had been, particularly after I made it clear that I had no intention of discussing the situation further and that I would instead concentrate on moving on with my life after everything my dad did for her and her children. Since then, Lisa's circumstances have only gotten worse. Her attempts to win sympathy by playing the victim have failed miserably, and the industry my dad helped her enter has essentially turned its back on her. No one wants to work with someone who aired the last I heard. Jake and James severed all ties with Lisa, moved out of the condo, and haven't spoken to her since doing so. I heard from some mutual acquaintances that they approached a few people in the industry for work, but no one wanted to take a chance on them. Word spread about the lies she told and how she attempted to manipulate everything to her advantage. After everything was finally resolved, I offered my grandparents the mansion as a gift. They were hesitant at first, but eventually accepted, and I know my dad would have loved it. It's sad, really, but I can't bring myself to feel bad for any of them, because they stood by while Lisa made all these false claims and went along with her lies. They've already begun discussing renovations and updating a few things while keeping the heart of the house intact, so it feels like the right thing to do for them to have the house. It will be their space now, and I'm happy for them. As for me, I'm moving on to a new chapter because a big project came up overseas and I'm taking it. Professional opportunity, and it couldn't have come at a better time. After everything with Lisa, I realized I needed a new beginning, a change of scenery, new challenges, and an opportunity to focus on my work and myself away from the toxic environment that has surrounded me for the past few years. Before I leave, I've been spending a lot of time with my grandparents, helping them get settled in the mansion and making sure they're comfortable with everything they've been, my rock, during all of this. And it feels like a complete circle moment to know that they will be residing in the home that my dad cherished so much.